Hello and welcome back to my RC channel. I'm Andy RC and today I'm going to be taking a look at the SPC Maker K2. This is a sub 250 gram 2-inch freestyle copter that has got the Runcam Split Mini V2 up the front. And that sounds great, doesn't it? But I'm always cautious when reviewing an SPC Maker product because in the past they have released products that didn't even fly. It gives me the impression that they just write a bunch of components down on paper, get somebody to build it, and rather than test that it actually flies, send it out to the customer. They're also known for being expensive as well. So you might be thinking, why am I reviewing it? Well, it's the Cinewhoop phenomenon. You see, I really like these Cinewhoops. This is the Mobula 7 HD, but there's one aspect of them that I don't quite understand. You see, the idea of these guys is that you can fly them indoors, but in the house, because they take a 2 to 3S battery, I find them a little bit too powerful. So I've joined an indoor sports hall and it's great for in there. But if you don't have that option, you have to take them outside. And if you just fly them in a straight line or do nice smooth turns, then you do get great HD footage out of them, and people will say that's why they're called a Cinewhoop. But if you start doing acro with them, they start to do strange maneuvers on their own, known as yaw washout. And that is because we have got these ducts here, and the flight controllers aren't designed to deal with the drag and the turbulent air from ducts, combined with the extra weight of the camera and also the heavy batteries that we are using. So that's why this guy caught my eye, because it is still fairly light. It's not as light as a Cinewhoop, but in this form it weighs 93 grams. Now, if 6 months ago a 2-inch model had been released and I'd have said it weighs 96 grams, you'd have said, oh, that's too heavy. But we've got a Split Mini V2 up the front here, remember. And with its battery, it only weighs 151 grams, so that's nearly 100 grams under this 250 gram regulation that is being put in place. It also comes with, ta-da, these guys. So you actually can add ducts. Yes, ducts, protectors, whatever you want to call them, are not a new thing, and you can add them to this one. You see, another reason I think as well that we get strange maneuvers with these guys is they are very weak, whereas here we've got a carbon fiber frame. Now, adding these protectors to copters has been around for a while, and I'll still say this, I wish they could just come up with a way where you can clip them on, because what you have to do is unscrew the motors and you have to put them on like that. Because that's another argument for having one of these is, yeah, they might do some strange maneuvers on their own, but they are lightweight, and if you were to hit people or property, then you have these protectors. Well, we have that with this if you want to add them. But I'm not going to do that because I like flying acro without any disturbance, and I think this copter has the potential to achieve that. So let's go over the specifications. So the motors are a decent brand. They are 3B. And they are a 1105 6000 kV. Now, there is a little bit of confusion on what battery to use, because on the website says that the ESCs can support up to a 4S. It also says that everything else can support up to a 4S. However, I plugged a 4S battery into it and armed it, and the motors got incredibly hot. And then I noticed on the side of the box here that it says a 2 to 3S battery. So I'm going to be using a 550 milliamp GMB battery. Now you might be wondering why there is rubber bands all over it. Well, I've started doing this really to keep the balance plug out of the way, but just in true SPC Maker style, doesn't really suggest where to mount the battery. You would think top mount, but you aren't given anything that stops it slipping from a top mount. And we've got these cutouts here which suggest that it could be a bottom mount. The problem is we've got all of the wiring under here, and you're only given this one strap, so you can't put your strap underneath there. So what I've started doing is putting rubber bands around the batteries, and then when that goes on the top there, the rubber band acts like a silicone mat and it won't slip. So the frame is actually a H frame, and I really liked this style of frame. I'm not quite sure why it disappeared. It gets the props out of shot. One problem we do have though is you can see there is this cutout for some reason where the camera lens goes, so the camera isn't protected at all despite us having these two bars. It's also limited at that angle because we have got these spars in the way. I guess you could remove this one to get a flatter angle for flying indoors. So the flight controller is a F4 flight controller, and that is situated here, and the ESCs are back here. They are a 20 amp BL Heli S ESC, and I think it's the same stack that they had in the 140X, and then the VTX is also the same, which sadly means that it does not have smart audio, which I know for a modern copter that is going to put everybody off straight away. It is the same VTX as the 140X, and I think it's the same VTX as the Fury B X140, and it's got this button on the side here. It's 40 channel, it's switchable up to 100 milliwatt, and I'll link to my Fury B X140 video because it just uses a series of LEDs to tell you what channel that you're on, and it can be quite confusing, so I don't want to go through that again. I'll just link to that video. But to counterbalance the need for smart audio, two of my favourite copters, the Emax Hawk 5 and the Skyzone S140, which sadly I don't think they make anymore, don't have smart audio. So it might not be the case that everybody needs smart audio. If you fly on your own, for example, and you have a reliable band scanner, then there's no need for it, and maybe this guy is for you. And then we've got the Runcam Split Mini V2 at the side here. We've got an XT30 connector at the back, and we've also got an LED board and buzzer, which is all connected up, so you can program the buzzer to go off as a lost model alarm, and you can program the LEDs, and it did already have setup in there as well. So it came with Betaflight version 3.50, which is fairly old now, but I kept with it, and there was only a couple of things I needed to change. It didn't have air mode, I don't think, but it had a lot of things set up. But you know, I would say anything that has Betaflight on it, you're going to need to be accustomed to Betaflight. You're going to want to customize it yourself, and I've done that with my rates. I did try their PIDs, and you'll see how that went later. This is the Bind and Fly version, and a good thing is that it's available with various different receivers. This is the XM Plus, but it did not come flashed with the RSSI version of the firmware, so they've just taken it out of the box and just put everything together. But it did come with the antennas connected at the back here on some cable ties and some heat shrink, which I actually quite like. The VTX antenna, which is a linear antenna, however, was not routed out of the front here, which meant that I couldn't really top mount the battery. But because I didn't have the option to put a strap through the bottom, what I did was I rerouted the antenna out the front, and then that puts it above the battery. Otherwise the battery would block the signal when it was on there. So yeah, true SPC maker style there. The antenna just came out the back along with these antennas. Now these are long enough to stick above the battery, but when this goes through this spar here, then your battery is basically sitting on top of the antenna. The props are the Avan Blur, which I don't think I've heard of before, but you're only given one set of those, and there are no instructions whatsoever in the package, which for this price I think you should completely get. Now the flight controller has got Betaflight on-screen display and 2 spare UARTs, but guess what? They have not hooked up RunCam controls to it, which they could have done. So, you know, it just goes to show you that they just pick these components, put them together, but don't put too much thought into it, I don't think. So that's something that could have been done straight away. On the plus side, you could do that yourself quite easily, and you could also replace the VTX for one with smart audio, and we've got another UART there, so we could attach smart audio using a different VTX. Now the RunCam is the M8 version, and some of you might not know this, but some of the viewers pointed out when I reviewed the GEP-RC Signet that it has got the M12 lens, and this isn't really SPC maker's fault or any other company's fault that is running a RunCam Split Mini V2, because they have changed the camera without changing the version number, and that really does make me wonder how that's going to affect these bind and fly models that come with these RunCams, because at a certain point they're going to have to start using this one, and you have to ask the question, is it going to fit? I think it would fit on this one, but then there's the other question, you know, when is it going to start feeding through to these bind and flies? And you can only blame RunCam for that. But yeah, I actually really like this GEP-RC Signet. It is my current favourite sub 250 gram freestyle copter that's got one of these cameras on there, although I do think I prefer the Cadex camera these days just because of the microphone, and I hope that they're able to resolve the issue they have with Betaflight, because the Cadex camera does have the ability to do the same thing as RunCam controls, but I think there's some confliction at the moment of getting it into Betaflight. Betaflight basically said no more protocols, but there is a workaround, I believe, that you can do, but you have to do a bit of remapping, which I think is a bit of a shame. Okay, let's line of sight this guy. Now I should say, at this point I've already done the FPV flight for a couple of reasons. First of all, the sun is out, and I wanted to see how the camera dealt with Jello, although it's still out. But secondly, the tune wasn't any good. Now, when I say the tune wasn't any good, they may have used a different battery, or they may have not top mounted it like me. This is a 550 milliamp 3S GMB battery, and I tell you what, this thing is feeling really stable line of sight. But really, all this is to do is to show what the punch is like, so let's give that a go. Yeah, not bad at all for a freestyle copter. And despite its shortcomings when it comes to components, it's actually flying really nicely. So let's go into acro. And not getting any oscillations, getting nice smooth rolls, which is what we want from these. I don't know, what would we call these, like sub 250 gram freestyle cine-copters but without ducts? I don't know. Let's go for another punch. Yeah, you can hear the tone slightly change, so I think there's going to be some voltage sag with this guy. But I think the motors would overheat on a 4S. There's some conflicting information. The box says input voltage up to a 3S, yet the website says up to a 4S. But when I put a 4S battery on this guy and spun up the motors, they got so hot I couldn't touch them, and that's usually a sign that the guy shouldn't be running on 4S. Anyways, flying nice line of sight. Oh, I haven't done one of my power loops that I like to do. Let's go for one of them. Yeah, does that nicely. So let's bring it in. Okay, let's take a look at some flight footage, and straight away I could see that there was a problem with the tune. We are getting some oscillations. Now, to be fair to SPC Maker, I don't know what battery they used with their PIDs. I'm going to be guessing that it was a heavier battery, so this is a 550 milliamp battery, but anyways, I thought I'm gonna have to bring this in because, well, it's not flying nice, but I think I can see some potential here. So I brought it in, and these are the PIDs that I went with. Now I'm using my Onway Commander V2 goggles here because it came with the 16:9 as the DVR. So let's see how it flies now. Much better and smoother. So if we cut to the DVR footage, you can see that we are getting noise on the screen, and it's kind of become accepted that if you put one of these split cameras on your model, especially without a capacitor, which this one doesn't have, although the ESCs look like they have got quite a lot of ceramic capacitors on there, you're gonna get these lines. However, if you notice on the cine whoops, you tend to not to get that. I don't know if that's because there's no carbon around, or because they're drawing less amps, or it might just be that the Cadex V2 is less susceptible to noise, because I actually haven't tried a Cadex V2 on a model that has got carbon fiber everywhere, so maybe I'll have to buy one. Patreon link in the below. But what I was happy about is the lack of Jallo. You see, we have got a sunny day for once, and the sun is out, and I would expect loads of Jallo, but it's not getting that at all. So, you know, if you aren't too bothered about the noise of the DVR, which you kind of can't be bothered by with the split mini at least, then the video footage that was coming back was pretty impressive, and the flight time wasn't too bad either, so can't complain about that. And it's not doing any of its high maintenance maneuvers that the cine whoops do. And I'm not trying to upset cine whoop people here. I do really like the cine whoop. It's just a little bit frustrating, and I think if we could find sort of like a middle ground where we can remove the ducts if you really want to do proper acro without having to, you know, manage the throttle and be very careful with what you do, then, you know, I really like this format because, as I say, it bypasses the 250 gram regulation that everyone's talking about, and it's flying really nice now. So as you can see, I can do all of the maneuvers that I do with my 5-inch. You know, we can do inverted jaw spins, and we can do the cartwheels that I like to do, and those are all maneuvers that the whoops struggle to do. So we've got over a 3-minute flight time on this battery, which I think is fair enough, but we're at 9 volts, so I'm bringing it in for a landing. So there you go, that is my review of the SPC Maker K2. Make of it what you will, I will say, and if you want one, I will link it in the below. And as always, thanks so much for watching. Please continue to subscribe. Cheers.